Well, thank you for having me again. And this is our last session for at least a few months. So we can just rejoice that we've got this far and really just prepare our mind for engaging these most precious teachings. Unbelievable. So much virtue we've created in the past to meet Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings. And so much merit we create in the present to continue to meet them again and again, to take them more deeply into the heart to bring about change. To be able to use our life most extensively for its purpose, for its meaning, in being of benefit and service. To a single living being. How fortunate we are to be able to use our life and direct it in this way. Because we really do have the leisure and all the most perfect internal and external conditions assembled in this very life. And so we just cannot waste it or take it for granted, because we live within the jaws of death and impermanence. And so it's wonderful we can come together to really try to awaken our Buddha potential. Develop the good heart. And through relying on the infallible Guru, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, petitioning, putting into practice the teachings, being encouraged and supported to bring about the results. We too can attain such a resultant state. And why? Why would we wish to attain that state? Because then we can truly, most effectively, unmistakably benefit sentient beings. And so together we can go for refuge, generating mind of bodhicitta. Remembering that, as Chandrakuri said, relying on Buddha Dhamma Sangha is for those desirous of liberation. So for that purpose, liberation, great liberation, enlightenment. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Okay, and so just want to get my screen set up so I can make sure I can see you all. And so tonight we conclude the Four Truths by moving quite quickly through true cessation, true paths. In the last couple of weeks, we saw how we engage cyclic existence, how we create the causes, true origins, which are like the karma afflictions, the chief being this ignorance grasping at a self. And from those causes, we bring about the results of true suffering. So what we want to do is reverse our cyclic existence. And so in order to be able to do that, we saw how it was possible. We saw how true suffering, which we experience in every moment, from either a very obvious coarse manifest level to something very subtle, like these suffering aggregates, body and mind, propelled by karma and afflictions. And so when we become fed up, tired, exhausted from suffering, then that's usually when we'd go to the doctor, right? So here, that's when we would go to seek out the supreme physician and find out, is there a cause of my suffering? And knowing that there is a cause, because we see it's more heightened at certain times, it's less obvious at other times, so it's occasional, and it has this subject to increase and decrease. And so we know it has a cause, and we know that cause from that subject of increase and being subjected to increase and decrease, we know that it's an impermanent cause. So therefore, if it is caused and has an impermanent cause, then we need to know what that cause is specifically. And when we look at the teachings of the Buddha, we'll see briefly in this session, but as we have in past sessions, how we create our own suffering by holding ourselves to exist in a way that's not based in reality. So, we hold ourselves to exist quite independently, unrelated to like any, even like causes and conditions, parts, not merely labeled by mind, as if we search for it within the body or mind and we find this independent me-ness. And from that, we discriminate. We discriminate good and bad. We discriminate what's me, mine, and myself, and my loved ones, and anything that threatens that. Because this is what we want to protect. So anything that threatens that, then we develop this aversion to, attachment to what's mine, and aversion to anything that comes to threaten what's mine. So we see this root is this ignorance grasping at a self, a wrong consciousness. And then because it's a wrong consciousness, not according with reality, then when we investigate, we see that we can overcome it, directly oppose it. And so therefore we see that true cessations, freedom from true origins that bring about true suffering. We see that freedom from the third type of suffering, the pervasive suffering of conditionality, this body and mind pervaded by suffering, we see that can be overcome. And so then, that's when really we strengthen our refuge as well, because we understand, that we can rely on the Buddha Dhamma Sangha to attain the state of liberation. And of course, we want to join that state of, we want that liberation to be enlightenment. So we want to, when we see that we can overcome our suffering, and how we do that by directly opposing that ignorance is really by generating a true path. So, which we'll look at today. And we want to really support that main true path as wisdom, realizing emptiness. We want to support that with this bodhicitta mind. So this supreme method and wisdom coming together and direct it towards enlightenment. So that's where we're kind of going to have a look today, is a little bit more detail in true cessations. So when we think of liberation or nirvana, we can think of it as in just the typical Hinayana level of liberation. But of course, as Mahayanas, practicing, in a Mahayana way, we want to naturally think of great liberation. So more than just abandoning afflictive obscurations and actually becoming a Buddha. So you can think about the presentation in either way, although our motivation would be naturally for great liberation. So true cessations, there's really some fundamental reasoning that comes down to it that's good to always remember. And that sort of fundamental reasoning we can make obvious in our everyday life. We can remember it at the most pertinent times, to remember how we can overcome whatever we're experiencing, and that it's not stuck. We're not forever suffering. It is possible to overcome it. And when we look at the reasonings behind it, it becomes a really powerful way of remembering the reasoning and then enacting the reasoning, so that we don't just stay stuck in our suffering, but we actually get out of it. So let's have a look at the reasoning. So Precious Dhammakirti, he said, the nature of the mind is clear light. The stains are adventitious. So this is something very pertinent to try to remember always, that the nature of our mind is this clear light. There's no mind in mind. There's no inherently existent mind in mind. The nature of the mind is clear light from a conventional point of view. It's clear and knowing. From an ultimate point of view, it lacks inherent existence. So this nature is very much unaffected by any stains. They're adventitious. So just like the analogies we can bring to mind of like polluted water and all the muddy, sediment that, when we shake up that water, which is most of the time our agitated state, we're constantly going between disturbed states of mind, attachment, aversion, ignorance pervading all. And so, that nature of the water has not been penetrated, even though it looks all brown and murky and yucky. If we allow it to just settle, the pollutants to settle, to become non-manifest, we can really see the clarity of the nature of the water or the nature of our mind. And so therefore we can see that very nature has not been tainted. The nature is not polluted. It's not ingrained, inseparable within the mind. And so this is, really a very wonderful reasoning to always keep in mind, because no matter what we're going through, it can be removed. It can be overcome. And so, the muddy water is an example. Other examples might be, like the ocean. And if we hang out at the surface, we'll get, maybe before we get out the back, we're in amongst all the waves crashing all around us. And without a surfboard to be able to navigate and ride the waves and use them in maybe a mind training way, but we're just getting smacked and crashed around, and maybe even caught in the rip that's going to be sending us further out and out to sea without control of the shore, and feeling grounded in the low water. But if we go beneath the crashing waves and do a deep dive down, everything's very calm, very pristine, very clear. And so that could be another analogy we use. I'm just looking out the window at the moment, and also it's a bit cloudy here at the moment, a reflection of my mind. But I can see a patch of blue, so I have some hope. So, the nature of the sky being that vast, expansive blue state, and the clouds are just passing through, not remaining, very temporary. And the wisdom wind can easily blow them away, and we can see then the revealed nature of the sky. So there's many analogies we can use for this, whatever is helpful. And I find, because those are examples that we can generally see in our everyday experience, it's nice to bring them to mind when we actually do encounter a worldly example like that, to make it become Dharma. So the nature of the mind is clear light. The stains are adventitious. So it was Kedrup J that gave a beautiful definition, basically of adventitious. And he said that means it's suitable to be removed. So they arise due to causes and conditions. They are not ingrained, penetrating the nature of our mind, and therefore we can remove them if we have a powerful antidote that can come along to overcome and destroy them. And so that powerful antidote is really going to be the true path that we're looking at. So there's the summary of basically what I tried to say. Let's just have a look to make sure I covered what I intended. True cessation, so here's the reason: because true cessation is possible because, what are the reasons? Here's 3 of them. The fundamental nature of consciousness is luminous and pure, so clear and knowing, this sort of thing. Afflictions can be purified, that is separated from the essential nature of the mind, and there are powerful antidotes that can be applied to counteract the afflictions. So basically, I just want to see if I've got some notes on this. So true cessations. So what we're talking about is a freedom. We're talking about a freedom that's been induced by an uninterrupted path. So we're talking from the path of seeing onwards. So it's not just a path, which I think by definition is something like a clear realization qualified by uncontrived renunciation, something like this. We're not just talking about a path, which would be as soon as you've generated, renunciation or bodhicitta, which is necessarily having generated self-compassion, renunciation, the wish to be free of cyclic existence, and its causes. So wishing to have that freedom from suffering and its causes, which is self-compassion. And then necessarily we need renunciation to even be able to generate great compassion, or even bodhicitta, where we switch the spotlight from oneself being free of suffering and its causes to all sentient beings. So not just generating a path, but here we're talking about an uninterrupted path, a true path. So we're talking about not from the path of accumulation, path of preparation, but path of seeing onwards. So it's a freedom induced, brought about by that uninterrupted path of the path of seeing. And that uninterrupted path of seeing is a very powerful antidote to abandon a portion of afflictions on that path of seeing. When we abandon that portion of afflictions, then what happens is we attain a true cessation that's induced by that uninterrupted path. So we haven't abandoned all obscurations. It doesn't happen just in one go. It happens very gradually as we progress through along the paths of seeing and meditation. So nevertheless, instead of talking about like that ultimate true cessation of nirvana, we're talking about just abandoning a portion of afflictions. So when we attain a liberated path, path of seeing, then we have abandoned. The uninterrupted path is abandoning. And when we have that powerful antidote present, and it is strong enough, powerful enough to abandon the afflictions, a portion of them, then that abandonment is going to be a true cessation. So basically, for the consequence school, it's an emptiness. So it's an emptiness of the mind and a lack of inherent existence. So when we talk about true cessations, it's not just any emptiness, it's not just any lack of inherent existence of the mind, for instance, because that exists even on the path of seeing. It exists even now for us, a lack of inherent existence of our mind. So it's not just that freedom from natural stains being inherent existence, a freedom from inherent existence. It's not just that. So when we talk about true cessations and being in emptiness, we're talking about not just the lack of inherent existence, but we're talking about a freedom from adventitious stains. Okay? So it's got this twofold purity. Freedom from inherent existence, no problem, but freedom from the afflictive obscurations and then the knowledge obscurations. So the freedom from the portion of stains, the adventitious stains, which we said were, adventitious, they were temporary, they can be removed. Removed how? By this powerful antidote of a true path. So it's a little bit maybe tricky and confusing, but I'll try to make it more clear as I go along. So true cessations are emptinesses from the consequence point of view, Prasangika. It's a freedom induced by an uninterrupted path, which induces it, in which a corresponding obscuration has been abandoned. So that's where we're just a portion of the abandonments is taking place in a very gradual manner. Okay. True cessations are the separation from suffering and its causes, to the point that these, once they have been abandoned, they cannot arise again. They don't return. So once you've abandoned afflictions, they're abandoned forever. Okay? And so we can talk about an ultimate true cessation, that of nirvana, or the one we're all aiming for, this supreme true cessation, which we saw in a different module when we were together for refuge, and we looked at the four Buddha bodies, and one of them was the essence kaya, and that had a twofold division, and one of them was a natural purity, a lack of inherent existence, but then had this adventitious purity. So that's what we're aiming for, to fully abandon not only afflictive obscurations, but knowledge obscurations. So if we can attain this true cessation, it's going to bring about a complete, irreversible, irreversible, yeah, that's the right word, removal of all of our obscurations. So it's not going to be just some temporary abandonment. It's not just suppressing, it's totally eradicating forever all suffering, afflictions, and karma, all those sorts of things. Okay, so therefore we need to develop that wish to actualize cessation, seeing that we're suffering, that it has a cause, and being a cause, if we stop the cause, we stop its result, suffering. So, so therefore we can actualize cessation. We can actualize freedom from suffering. We don't have to remain stuck. But this comes down to our wish, our desire. And what we need to check up in our own mind is just how comfortable we are in samsara, and just how comfortable we want to use the Dharma to make our life. So, how much renunciation do we have, or how much is really just about making this life a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more happy? So this is the danger for us, isn't it? Because right now our conditions are so good that we can just find ourselves getting really quite comfortable in samsara, and we may not, really seek to be free from suffering and its causes. And certainly, if we're focused on this life alone, and the happiness of this life, then we're not even a small scope practitioner yet, are we? So, that's the challenge for us, is having to give up the worldly comforts. And if we practice the Dharma and we see all the stuff in our minds and we go, oh my God, ever since coming to the Dharma, life is just, my life has become worse because I'm now seeing all my afflictions and negative karma playing out. And maybe it's the Dharma that's, it wasn't like this beforehand, right? So maybe we can think that the Dharma is the cause of us actually, being unhappier, because we're seeing the muck in our minds, and we may give it up. So the more we can try to overcome our worldly concerns of just seeking the happiness of this life, the comforts of this life, the good reputation of this life, and praise and all the gain and everything, and aversion to the opposites. And then the more we can focus on actually even a small scope practitioner's goal, happiness of future lives, then, this is a start, but it's very far from where we want to be, because it's still, we've achieved that goal. We've achieved a precious human rebirth, which is what they're aiming for, an upper realm rebirth. So clearly it's not enough. And the true cessation is really looking at the middle scope practitioner's goal of actually attaining liberation. So freedom from this third type of suffering. But for us, that's clearly not enough. And we need to combine it with bodhicitta. So basically, let's have a look at what I've got next before I jump. Okay, we can go there. True paths. So if we want to be free of all of our suffering, then we need to be able to antidote in a very powerful way the afflictions, and the chief one being that ignorance grasping at a self. And so looking at true paths, it's not just this wisdom realizing emptiness. It also includes the vows we hold in our continuum, which are a form from a Prasangika point of view. But mostly what we're talking about with true paths here is we're talking about consciousnesses that are a path that lead us to liberation or enlightenment. So true paths. So this is the medicine that's going to bring about the cure or the state of excellent health, to remember Maitreya's quote, So yeah, anyway. So true paths, they exist in the continuum of an Arya being. So they're not from the path of accumulation or before that. They're only from the path of seeing onwards. Being an Arya being, they've necessarily had a realization that's non-conceptual of emptiness. So a non-conceptual realization of emptiness. Therefore, they have the powerful antidote to be able to overcome the afflictions and the seeds of afflictions and so forth, and therefore proceed along a path to liberation. So true paths, true cessations, they are, when we looked at the Dharma jewel in the refuge module, so the actual refuge is the Dharma jewel. And so here we're looking at true paths. And the main true path is that non-conceptual realization of emptiness that abandons the afflictions and their seeds. It causes us to separate. It's not the separation, that was the true cessation, but it's the cause. It causes us to separate from the sufferings by stopping the causes of why we suffer, by stopping the afflictions, by stopping the ignorance grasping at inherent existence on which all the problems come, from karma, and suffering of cyclic existence. All of this comes about due to afflictions, and the chief of those afflictions is that ignorance grasping at itself. So true paths, it's more than just that clear realization or pristine wisdom qualified by uncontrived renunciation, because here what makes it a true path as opposed to just a path is it's in the continuum of an Arya, and so therefore it's a true path. All right, so true paths are the antidotes. They're going to oppose the ignorance, And once we attain that path of seeing as in the Mahayana vehicle, then along with that, we develop all these excellent qualities, like being able to emanate, like from the path of seeing 100 bodies, and then it increases, 1,000 bodies and so forth. So not only being able to emanate bodies, but go to Buddha realms, that many in Buddha realms, and have a retinue of bodhisattvas, also that many, 100, 1,000 and so forth. And we also, because we're, generating the 6 perfections as well. So we develop higher practices of the higher practice of perfection of generosity, where we overcome all miserliness and proceed through, ethics, patience, and so forth. So we're developing, all these excellent qualities along the way as well, which are going to overpower whatever is discordant. So in the case of generosity, what's discordant is miserliness and so forth. So except for vows, true paths of consciousnesses, called paths because when generated, delivers one to liberation. All right, so therefore, what do we need to do? We need to engage in the means to attain these cessations. So as much as possible, we need to develop things like the 3 principal aspects of the path in our mind. So we need to develop renunciation. Without renunciation, there is no cause for liberation. So without renunciation, whatever we do, whatever virtue we create, it'll only be experienced in cyclic existence. So right now, I feel personally, I'm quite good at creating good conditions for cyclic existence. But the difficulty is I don't want to be creating causes for cyclic existence. We want to get the heck out of here, right? So we need to really try to, cultivate renunciation, which means that we have to stop seeking the pleasures of cyclic existence. We have to be able to counter our attachments. We have to be able to rely on internal causes for our happiness and stop seeking everything that's a sensory pleasure external to us as if it's real happiness. So this is also how we can apply this in our daily life, because we get to a point where we have to really generate that heart of renunciation, and we have to prioritize even a short-term loss of happiness, a short-term loss of temporary happiness for this greater happiness. So when we engage in the sensory pleasures, we're feeding samsara. We're selling off liberation and enlightenment. But quite often we just want the quick fix, don't we? So this is, when we're confronted with sensory pleasures in our daily going about our activities, then this is something that we can bring to mind, this renunciation. Without renunciation, all virtue will become a cause of cyclic existence. With renunciation, all virtue can become a cause for liberation. But that's not enough for us. So, 3 principal aspects. So we need this bodhicitta. So on the basis of renunciation, developing great compassion, developing bodhicitta. When we have this bodhicitta, then we're creating causes for enlightenment. And we want to make sure that that's the direction that we're going. So when we're setting up motivations, when we wake up in the morning, first thing before we even open our eyes, bodhicitta motivation, even, generating the strong aspiration, may I attain the form body of a Buddha so that I can effortlessly and spontaneously enact everyone's welfare as soon as possible. But not just for ourselves, may all beings even attain the Rupakaya. And when we go to sleep, may all beings realize the Dharmakaya, this clear light nature of mind. And as much as possible, trying to bring in that bodhicitta motivation throughout a day. So it's not that all your activities need to change. It's not that renunciation is giving up your job, giving up your house, giving up your family, and heading to the Himalayas, right? So it's an internal process. So with bodhicitta, then whatever we do in the day, caring for a family is so precious, so amazing. Caring for our parents, so precious. And doing that with a bodhicitta motivation. So our actions don't necessarily need to change unless they're non-virtue, but our motivation, everything we're doing to care for our loved ones can be with a bodhicitta motivation, a cause to liberate all sentient beings from suffering and bring them to enlightenment. And with that in mind, then we go about engaging in the various activities of generosity, feeding the children, or feeding our mother if she's not well, and so forth. So it's so 3 principal aspects I was talking about. So renunciation, bodhicitta, and then this wisdom realizing emptiness. And I'll talk a little bit more about daily activities we can do with that later. So with this, in understanding true paths, how they abandon and cause us to separate from the afflictions and so forth. So and remember, the chief one is this non-conceptual realization of emptiness. So right now, just through this, through the afflictions, through the imprints of the afflictions and all this sort of stuff, we have a very strong holding to a self that actually does not exist. This is the laughable aspect. If we can become Aryas, I'm sure we would genuinely laugh at this, how absurd it is that right now we hold so tightly as if there's a real I, because everything appears to us as existing solidly and inherently, independently, and it's just like hallucinated from our ignorance. But this is the root of why we are in cycling existence, why we're trapped. So when this I, this, from our ignorance, hallucinates this inherently existent I, and then, what's mine, my body, my mind, my loved ones, and so forth, from that, we discriminate, like a self and other. We divide everything into self and other based on that, grasping at a true existence. I'm using true existence there, but I'm using it in the Prasangika point of view of being synonymous with inherent existence. So based on that, we develop this improper mental attention, which is this like exaggeration. We superimpose onto everything qualities that are not actually there. So when we exaggerate qualities that are not present in the object, then what it can do is really lead to strong attachment or strong aversion, and 84 other thousand afflictions. So then from those afflictions, that it motivates us to act in a certain way, to go after what we want, or to lash out physically, verbally, and so forth. So all of this is driven by these mental afflictions, and those are all coming back to that ignorance grasping at a self as the root. So this is the root of why we suffer. So everything appears to exist truly, and we hold on to it. We believe in those appearances. We entrust those appearances as truth. And you can see how everything that follows on from that is actually just going down a path to create more and more cyclic existence. So this is the trouble. If while we have this grasping at an inherently existent self or phenomena, our aggregates, then we are only creating these causes for cyclic existence while we entrust the appearances of how we and others exist, how self and all phenomena exist, as if it's independent. And so what we need to do is really challenge those really long-held beliefs, because right now we just buy into appearances. And so there's exercises we can do on a daily basis, which we'll go into in a moment. So basically, if we want to be creating causes for this suffering as cyclic existence, if we want to be creating causes for nirvana instead, then what we need to do is antidote this very powerfully with the non-conceptual realization of emptiness, and then whatever flows on from that grasping at true existence as cause and effect comes undone. If we can stop the cause, we stop its results. Okay, so grasping at true existence is our target. I've established we need a non-conceptual wisdom realizing emptiness, It needs to have a directly contradictory mode of apprehension to ignorance grasping at a self, but that's not enough. It can't just have an opposite way of seeing things. Even more than that, this grasping at true existence, this ignorance, is a wrong mind. It's a false mind. How ignorance perceives things to exist is not actually how they exist. So it's actually a false mind. While everything appears to our mind, all our consciousnesses to exist truly, and that from that ignorance, and we believe in those appearances. So those appearances are true for ignorance, but they're not true in reality. They're actually false. So this ignorance is a wrong consciousness. It doesn't accord with reality. It's actually built on very unstable foundations. Whereas if we can get a directly contradictory mode of apprehension to true existence, so what would be directly contradictory to that would be lacking true existence or empty of true existence. So rather than true existence, we need to negate true existence to be directly contradictory to it. And so that's where we have the wisdom realizing the lack of true existence. That's directly contradictory, right? True existence, lack of true existence. So it's more than just a directly contradictory mode of apprehension, because otherwise you could say, well, why doesn't true existence oppose the wisdom realizing the lack of true existence? Because it has a directly contradictory mode of apprehension. You see? Doesn't matter which way you look at it, they're both directly contradictory. So it's more than just a directly contradictory mode of apprehension. That's where we need to make sure that our wisdom realizing emptiness is established in dependence on valid reasoning, reasons and logic, many reasons, and therefore it has a stable foundation, unshakable, and it's true. So how this wisdom realizing emptiness, the lack of true existence, how things appear to that mind is unmistaken. The mode of things appearing as lacking true existence to that mind is how they exist in reality, lacking true existence. So the mode of appearance and the mode of existence or mode of abidance is actually lacking inherent existence. So these two are concordant, they're in agreement. The appearance appearing as lacking inherent existence, and that is the way the object exists, lacking inherent existence. So this is a true mind, this wisdom realizing lack of inherent existence is true, as opposed to the ignorance when things appear to inherently exist, but they don't exist that way in reality. So it's a false mind. So therefore, when we look at what it takes to overcome this grasping at true existence, to really hit that target, okay, it's not adequate that we realize anything less. So if we realize like the wisdom of course selflessness, like a lack of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self, or things don't have things, you know, as if there's something coming from the side of the object as well as the mind imputing it, you know, none of these are going to be enough in realizing the emptiness that is required to overcome the grasping at true existence. So even beyond the wisdom minds, if we look at love and patience and any other virtuous, you know, like the four immeasurables, we could look at joy, equanimity, compassion. None of these are going to hit the target. So whilst love and patience are wonderful antidotes to anger, for instance, and anger being an affliction that is brought about in dependence on grasping at true existence, it's not going, if we overcome our anger, we overcome this level. But still, grasping at true existence, the root arises and will produce further afflictions and karma and suffering, and we'll never get out of cyclic existence. So love and patience, compassion, anything that's a wisdom realizing emptiness of the schools below the Prasangika, none of this is going to be enough to actually destroy or annihilate that grasping at true existence, because they don't directly oppose ignorance. Remember, we needed that directly contradictory mode of apprehension built on, reasons and logic and so forth and everything else, but they don't directly oppose grasping at true existence. Love opposes anger, patience opposes anger, but they don't oppose the grasping at true existence. And so therefore, it's not enough to hit the target. What they are, Kedrick J talks about it beautifully. He calls them suppressing antidotes. Patience and love suppress our anger. They make it non-manifest, but they don't destroy it at its very seeds. So it will arise again when the antidote's not present. So suppressing antidotes is a beautiful way of looking at it. And it's like taking a painkiller, like some paracetamol or something like this. It stops the pain, reduces the symptoms, but it's not a cure, So whatever reason we're experiencing pain or something like this, just taking a painkiller is going to give us some temporary relief for maybe 2 hours or 4 hours, but then the symptoms are going to come back. So love and all of the four immeasurables and all of these things, these are all just suppressing antidotes. So the only thing that is truly going to help, that is directly contradictory, is this wisdom realizing the lack of or the emptiness of true existence. That directly opposes. And then that's going to be what we need to uproot. So before we saw suppressing antidotes, but now this is an uprooting. It's going to uproot all of our suffering, karma, afflictions, everything, because it uproots the very root of cyclic existence. Okay? And so if we can develop that wisdom realizing emptiness of true existence, first conceptually, through the medium of a generic image of your conceptual mind, then what we can do, that's still not a true path, right? Because it's not in the continuum of an aria. We need to develop that wisdom realizing emptiness to actually break through, to see nakedly emptiness without the medium of a generic image. We need to break through. When we break through in that non-conceptual, not conceptual, but now non-conceptual realization of emptiness, then only emptiness appears. And so therefore, with only emptiness appearing, nothing else is going to appear. All the conventionalities, generic image of emptiness, everything like that is going to actually also disappear, so that there'll be no appearances of inherent existence, the dualistic obscuration, subject and object is different. None of that will appear, only emptiness. Okay, that's when we achieve our first true path. Okay. So Aryadeva says, those with little merit do not even doubt this teaching. Entertaining just a doubt tears to tatters worldly existence. So even us just entertaining a doubt about the way things exist and trying to develop as much as we can this wisdom realizing emptiness, then even that shakes those foundations, because they're built on very unstable foundations. This ignorance grasping at a self, it's not supported by reasoning. It's not based in reasons and logic. It's not a correct mind. Okay? So if we can use the uprooting antidote and meditate on it to overcome grasping at true existence, then even before we develop a non-conceptual realization, we develop a conceptual realization. But even before a conceptual realization, we might just have a correct assumption that things do lack inherent existence. But this is even before that. So this is even just having a doubt that maybe things lack inherent existence. Even just that is going to be enough to shake the foundations, to make them even more unstable. So what we need to do, obviously, is to develop these, true paths. But for us right now, we're just like, taking baby steps at each rung of the ladder. And we need to do that. We can't just jump from the ground to the middle, the first rung being the middle height of the ladder. It's impossible to get up there. So, so we do need these baby steps in place. And so that's what we can try to be developing. And, for us to develop the wisdom realizing emptiness, it's going to be really hard. And it takes a lot of merit. And it takes a lot of, petitioning the guru, supplicating the guru, and a lot of purification. And so, these are the baby steps. But also, if we think about the 3 higher trainings, so this being like the main method of the sage of the past shared with beings of the middle scope. So if we look at, ethics, concentration, wisdom, and we check up, okay, so how are my ethics compared to a year ago or 5 years ago? Are they the same? Have they got better, or have they got worse? And this is something, ethics is the foundation by which we develop a concentrated mind. In dependence on a concentrated mind, we can develop that wisdom. So one good way of abiding in ethics is taking vows. So this is also something we can do on a daily basis to help us develop, true paths, true cessations in our continuum. So ethics, they say ethics makes a distracted mind undistracted. So if you've ever tried to sit down to meditate and, you've engaged just previously in something unethical, it's impossible, right? You do a single point of meditation on what you did or what he said or what she said or what, that's a single point of meditation, but it's not a virtuous object. So when we try to meditate, unless we have a basis, a foundation of ethics, then our distracted mind is going to be all over the place. So what can we do on a daily basis to make sure our ethics is going in a good way of increasing? What are we doing with our concentration? Is it staying the same? Is it getting worse? Or is it developing? Prayer is not going to bring about the results. So being causative phenomena, we need to create those causes and conditions. So concentration, they say, balances an otherwise unbalanced mind. So we need ethics to attain a good fortunate rebirth, which is what we have done in the past to get this precious human rebirth that we're enjoying now. Ethics also weakens the afflictions. So particularly when you abide in vows, only if you can keep them, of course, then, by even if you can't take the vows, at least abandoning non-killing, abandoning stealing, practicing the 10 virtues by abandoning these negative actions, then it's going to weaken the afflictions. It's not going to uproot them, okay, but it's going to weaken them. If we can develop concentration, then what we can do is we can even stop the afflictions from becoming manifest. So we can suppress them. But it's only with that wisdom realizing emptiness that's going to actually eliminate them. So by training in wisdom, it liberates an unliberated mind. So ethical discipline, it makes a distracted mind undistracted. Training in concentration balances an unbalanced mind, and the training in wisdom liberates an unliberated mind. So we need to share these stages of the path in common with the middling scope beings, these 3 higher trainings, and develop them, a continuum of where we're aiming for true paths. But before that, there's this continuum, isn't there, of ethics, a continuum of concentration, a continuum of wisdom. And so these things feel quite unachievable right now, this wisdom realizing emptiness non-conceptually. But the continuum is possible for us to put into place even now, to weaken the afflictions by, taking vows or abiding in virtue, not cultivating non-virtue, trying to give up chasing in each moment the 8 worldly concerns. So we can do that right now. All right, so I talked about training in emptiness and some exercises that we can do. Before I go into that aspect, I was just wondering if there are any questions or comments that you guys would like to make. Now might be a really good time. I seem to have talked your head off today. Apologies for that, because it's not like last week where we can do more meditation. So I just want to be able to give you the complete package of the 4 truths. So apologies in advance. Any questions or comments? Nothing at the moment? Okay, well, maybe we can go on then. So Rinpoche, have you guys done, just, you can even put up your hand on the icon, has any, or just thumbs up, a non-graphic way, but has anyone done retreats with Lama Zopa Rinpoche before, like Light of the Path and these things? Oh, Shayla. Ningje. Barbara, you have? Yeah. Paula? What? Kodo? Oh my God, my hearts are aching for you right now. So, and I can't see the people who've got their just their names displayed. Oh, that's tragic. If you guys can get to a Rinpoche retreat, I'll come to Kopan. September, I think it's 3 to the 17th, and stay a few days later to do some pilgrimage. If it's possible, maybe you can somehow try to make that happen. I think it's the airfares that cost the most money. I think the accommodation usually is quite reasonable for people maybe like us who may not be the wealthiest, or maybe some of you guys have practiced so much generosity in the past. You're so wealthy now. But if you can come to places like Light of the Path, those sort of retreats, Rinpoche is an utter blessing to this world. Like, he just blows your mind, and it's just like so precious, because he is the embodiment of bodhicitta. He has these wisdom realizing emptiness and all these other realizations, and so you can see a living example, and he just takes you on such a journey. He's such a master, inspires you to become exactly like him. So at Light of the Path and other retreats he's done, he's often talked about, doing these daily sort of, reflections on emptiness. And he even suggests taking one of the, I'll maybe introduce a few of them, taking one of them and just practicing it for 1 week or 1 month. Don't try to do too much too soon, just one. And what I like to do as well is to put like post-it notes. Yeah, those little colored post-it notes are probably the same language as America, right? And just put them in your room, and with bodhicitta mindfulness messages, or what wisdom you're going to practice that week, and because otherwise we can forget. And other things that are helpful is like in your phone to set up a little, oh, hello, set up a little sorry, I got distracted by my gurus on my phone cover. Set up a calendar Yeah, a calendar entry. Yeah. So that you have a reminder that goes off. And these are very wonderful things to do primarily when you're in retreat, because then everything just calms down and colors even become more vivid. You know, your mind just really settles. But even when we don't always have the leisure of doing retreat, these are still wonderful things to practice on a daily basis as much as we can. So these appearances that we have thrown up by our ignorance, right, of everything existing as if it's solidly existing there. There's the table, there's the chair, there's Paula, there's, you know, Pema, you know, like everything we encounter appears as if there's the tree, you know, as if it's existing solidly, independently, as if there's a tree, like there actually isn't even a tree there. Like, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's the basis of designating tree, that we label tree on that basis. So this is the basis of designating phone, but there actually isn't phone here, as if it's covering the parts. Okay, it's kind of weird and trippy to get your head around because it's so subtle. And what we don't want to do is, you know, fall to wrong conclusions where we go, oh, so nothing exists at all. That's not the meaning of emptiness. Things exist. How do they exist? They exist lacking inherent existence. Because they lack inherent existence, it means they are dependent. They're dependent arising. So, you know, things, while things appear, they're empty. Okay. They exist dependently, dependent on what causes and conditions and parts, and being merely labeled by the mind. And then when we have that designation, that label, then things actually appear back to us as if it is that. But when Venerable Rabina does a great a short clip on Facebook, you can catch. If you Google it, it'll come up. Basically, she's looking for the inherently existent I, this self, and she uses the analogy of you know, buying something from IKEA, and you get the box, and you're going through the box, and you're assembling all the parts. But where is the me? Where is the I? As if it's supposed to be some separate part, but there's not. There is body and the mind. There are moments of mind. There's anger, there's attachment, there's jealousy, there's pride, there's love, there's compassion, and all of these wonderful other virtuous minds. And there's, you know, all the parts of the body. And but it's almost like you're expecting to find a part that says me, but there's not. And it's not that it's been left out. We don't need to return it to IKEA and say, oi, I'm missing the Allen key and the I. They look at you a bit strange. So when we investigate, how do I exist? And we, you know, go through looking at the basis of designation, the body and the mind, or the five aggregates, and we try to do analysis to see where among that basis of designation we will find the inherently existent self. What we find is the not finding. What we find is the lack. What we find is the emptiness of the inherently existent self. And so to train in that, because remember, right now, everything appears inherently existent, and we believe things exist that way. And then we create afflictions and karma and suffering. So, you know, those appearances are going to remain for all sentient beings, even the Aryas, except when they're in meditative equipoise, realizing the lack of inherent existence. But as soon as that Arya being comes out of meditative equipoise, things appear again inherently existent. But now they know that things do not exist in the way they appear. So for them, whilst appearing to inherently exist, they see them as existing like an illusion or a hallucination by that ignorance. Because now they know that, having seen reality in meditative equipoise, they know things are lacking inherent existence, but they still appear to inherently exist because of the imprints of our ignorance. And so until one has abandoned all the knowledge obscurations and attained Buddhahood, that's when those wrong appearances, mistaken appearances, no longer appear. Okay? So to counter this wrong habituation we've got with entrusting the appearances as they are, not even generating that doubt that maybe things lack inherent existence, to counter this, we can come up with some antidotes. And so one way we can do this is when it doesn't have to be sitting on the cushion. That could be reserved for other types of meditation that you're engaging in. But even while you're walking around, whatever you see it as a hallucination. So that was one of the techniques, a hallucination. So the action I'm engaged in. So for instance, who am walking, okay, along the path or the road, all of this is just hallucinated by my ignorance, as if it is a real me, a real I, doing real walking along a real path. So one way we can do that is try to transform just simple walking to look at everything as a hallucination. So to see things as hallucinated by ignorance, not existing as they appear. There is no real I engaged in real walking along a real path. There is no real I eating, real food. It's all hallucinated. So this can help to break down. Another thing could be to recognize, see it as like a dream. You know, in our dreams, it's so vivid, isn't it? Amazing. Like the colors are so amazing and vibrant. It feels like it just feels so real. It feels like reality. It feels non-different to our everyday experience. And even when we wake up, we can still have the lingering emotions, the sense of loss or the sense of joy or whatever emotions we're experiencing in the dream. They linger beyond the sleep, don't they? So if we can recognize the dream as a dream, so seeing this as like a dream, it doesn't exist solidly, independently, inherently, yet it appears that way. So we can train our mind to just take on these experiences when we're shopping, when we're eating, when we're engaging in work, when we're watching Netflix, any of these things, the real I, watching, the real watching of Netflix, the real Netflix. Things don't exist like this. There is no real I. It's hallucinated by ignorance. There is no real watching. There is no real Netflix. Okay? And so that's one, like talking about hallucination. Another meditation that Rinpoche suggests maybe to do another week is to see things as merely labeled by the mind. So once again, usually we talk about the three spheres, right? And preferably the emptiness of the three spheres. So I, the agent, action, and object. So once again, in relation to I, action, and object, see what you're doing as merely labeled I, engaged in merely labeled eating. Okay, this merely labeled food. So it can cut even our attachment to the food. If we're a bit food oriented, we get a bit graspy around food. Certainly if someone's trying to take it off our plate, but even just as an emotional eating, we might all engage in that at various times, right? A little bit of self-nurturing, self-comforting. So even just then to see it as, to counter some of that attachment, to see things as merely labeled, the merely labeled I engaged in merely labeled eating, merely labeled food. There is no food existing from its own side as findable when we search for it. We're talking inherently existent food. How does it exist? It exists in dependence on many, 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 many causes and conditions coming together, many parts associated with that particular type of food, okay? But none of it actually exists inherently as a locatable, inherently existent food. And yet things appear very concrete. For the Arya, things appear very illusory, as if you can just, literally put your hand through things as if they, whilst they appear, they don't exist in that way. But for us, things appear very concrete. And if you're in your meditation and you're doing a meditation on emptiness or things like this, and you actually, if it becomes so illusory that it almost even becomes non-existent, it can bring up a sense of fear because you feel you're going out of existence, for instance. So that fear or fright can come up and bring you back out of whatever you were doing. So even to go through fear, to go beyond fear, to realize, like the lack of inherent existence, the emptiness, that things are merely labeled by the mind. So these, I'll just finish. I don't know, maybe I'll chuck it in here. Yeah, maybe. Okay. So even when we have really strong attachment, right? So if you have very strong attachment for, a particular person, so we looked at previously, I think when we did true suffering, maybe we looked at like the impurity of the body, maybe 36 impurities. But another one, if you have strong attachment for a person, is to search for where in that body and mind is this inherently existent person that I'm holding on to and generating this strong attachment that cannot bear to be separated from this object. Okay? Because my happiness is so wrapped up and dependent on this person. And if they go, I won't have them anymore, and that will bring me pain. And so sometimes we can take that pain on even before they go because we know they're leaving tomorrow or something like this. So the sense of loss can already kick in because they're going away. So then we can do a meditation. Well, where is this inherently existent, because it appears to inherently exist, where is this independent, inherently existent person that I'm so attached to, the cause of my real happiness? And when we search and we do an investigation, checking out, well, are they their body? If they are their body, which part of their body? Okay. And they've got many parts, but there's not many persons. There's just one person. So, we investigate and we look through mentally their body and we can't find that person. And then we look through their mind, and which mind is it? Is it the past mind, the present mind, the future mind? Is it the virtuous states of minds, but not that non-virtuous? Is it this moment of mind, but not this moment of mind? Whatever we do, when we try to narrow it down and pinpoint it, we won't be able to find it. And what can happen even for people like us, as maybe not you guys, but for people like me, an amateur in the path who doesn't know much at all, it can still really stop the attachment which has come out of the grasping at true existence. So if we do a reflection like that, even though we might have 10 minutes earlier been in a heap of sadness at this person leaving, when we do an investigation like that, it can really counter not only the attachment, but even go back to the grasping and try to lessen that. And what actually happens is when we find there is no inherently existent person that I'm grasping onto, it's like the attachment and everything falls away. So this is something I found very useful to put into practice in those sort of heightened times, or like my mum had a really difficult experience one time during her severe dementia. And just, I felt so much overwhelmed when I was driving home to come back to CI, Chenrezig Institute, for something a day or so later. And I felt this great overwhelm. It was so heartbreaking to see. I mean, she couldn't even sit up. She couldn't do anything. It was just so messed up. And so this complete overwhelm and like depressed and just helpless set in. I'm driving home and I'm crying. And then, because it's so overwhelming to see your mum not even be able to sit, from the bed, couldn't even sit up. So couldn't stand, couldn't take her to the toilet, couldn't do anything. And this overwhelm was so much that I'm just like, kind of, like bawling as I'm driving down the road. And then I was thinking just how helpless I was, because as much as I wanted to help her, I couldn't. But then when I thought about, well, how would the lamas be dealing with this right now? And it just helped to realize that until I actually develop these qualities that I'm seeking, I won't be able to help my mother and all other mothers in that way. So it inspires one to practice. So then when I thought about, well, where is the inherently existent I that's feeling inherently existent depressed, inherently existent helpless? When I did a meditation on that and did not find that, then what happened is the crying stopped, and the helplessness stopped, the depressed stopped. Now it did come back, don't worry. I cried many times on that trip home, but I redid the meditation as well. So I found that it did actually help, but because the habituation of inherent existent I, who was inherently existent, helpless and depressed at that time, being so overpowered, was so strong, the habit from beginningless lives was so strong, naturally it came back, naturally, without concentration to suppress it, without wisdom to overcome it, it's going to come back. But in each time we can do that, and the space between the collapsing can grow longer. Okay, so these meditations can be done anywhere, even while driving or while walking or anything like that, and they definitely have an effect. So we've looked at hallucination. We've looked at, even recognizing it as like a dream. It's not a dream, but it's like a dream, merely labeled. And the other one is, that empty of true existence. So empty of inherent existence. There is no real I. That's, real driving, that's, or doing real prayers or anything like this, real cooking or whatever that activities we engage in. There is no real I, there is no real action, and there is no real object of that we're engaged in. And so I encourage you to give it a try. So even just for 1 week. The other thing that's nice is, because, anytime we've got the strong grasping, then we're going down one path to more samsara, strong grasping, creating afflictions, creating negative karma, bringing about future suffering. So samsara, or trying to counter it and live in ethics, weaken the afflictions and try to develop our concentration to one day be able to suppress it when, in a form realm, for instance, and certainly overcome it. Okay, so I would encourage you to give it a go, see what you think. I also encourage you to go to a retreat from Rinpoche. Another one, he says things is like, what appears does not exist. So what appears is inherent existence, inherently existent tree, inherently existent person, inherently existent phone, inherently existent computer. What appears does not exist. What exists does not appear. So this is a nice mantra you can do walking along. What appears does not exist. What exists does not appear. What exists is merely labeled by mind, tree, merely labeled by mind, computer, merely labeled by mind, person. So what exists, merely labeled, does not appear. Why doesn't it appear? Because inherent existence appears. So what appears does not exist. What exists does not appear. And so have a nice contemplation in that way as well. It's really nice. You can go for a walk and do wonderful meditations like that. It's really beautiful. Sometimes I also look out and I see things, and I see, various objects, and the emptiness of those objects abides with that object. Because it is empty, it can exist. Because it is empty, it is dependent on cause and conditions and, parts and so forth. So sometimes I use that as really highlighting the reasoning of because it is empty, it can appear. So they're just some suggestions. Let's see. Hopefully some of those are helpful. But there's many ways you can play with it. Things appear like a dream, hallucinated by my ignorance, illusioned by my ignorance. All of these are ways. Now, if we can generate even just a doubt, remember Aryadeva is saying that it can tear to tatters or shatter cyclic existence. It can just a doubt. Like, can you believe that? It's just a doubt that maybe it is like that. Maybe things do lack inherent existence. Maybe things are hallucinated by my mind. Maybe things are like an illusion, like a dream. That's all it has to be, a doubt. And it rocks the foundation. And certainly if you're generating that mind that's shaking up, that grasping, it's quite unlikely or impossible that afflictions will arise, that negative actions will happen. So what we do, say, and think is going to be more based in virtue, causes for liberation. So we don't have to have these great realizations now. We're just baby Buddhists, just trying to put one foot in front of the other. Okay? So abiding in virtue, cultivating virtue, refraining from non-virtue, trying to develop conviction in the law of cause and effect, cultivating ethics, concentration, wisdom, developing renunciation. More than that, developing great compassion, bodhicitta, practicing the 6 perfections, and eventually attaining enlightenment. But all of these are just a continuum, cause and effect. What we do now is going to actually transform to become these qualities in the future. So we can really start where we're at. We don't have to feel a sense of overwhelm. And if we do feel a sense of overwhelm, we'll investigate, where is this overwhelm? Where is this real overwhelm that I'm feeling? Where is this real I that's feeling overwhelmed? Do an investigation. Okay, so let's see. Even when we do Vajrasattva, does anyone do Vajrasattva in the evenings? Yeah. So even within Vajrasattva, there is this meditation on emptiness, isn't there? Where you try to see I, the creator of negative actions, the negative actions themselves, and negative karma created. None of it exists independently. Totally lacking inherent existence, and staying in that thought for lacking inherent existence, and staying as long as possible, and remembering that even just generating a doubt is beneficial. So if you're doing it for more than just a second in that Vajrasattva, then that's also going to be really helpful. So trying as much as possible to bring in meditations on emptiness throughout our day. Because one day without meditating on emptiness is going to be a great loss. Okay. So yeah, we can't get true past true cessation straight away, but we can climb the rungs of the ladder, and slowly, slowly we'll get there. Even if we give rise to attachment, with shopping, we can imagine that we're going to the shops, to sustain to follow the guru's advice, to sustain our body and mind, so that we can practice Dharma to benefit sentient beings. And with that sort of mindset, we can engage in buying what we need. So otherwise, if we go to the shop, we're just mesmerized by all these appearances, the sights and sounds, and the tastes and whatever else is going on, and we just grasp, grabbing. So more samsara, isn't it? So as much as possible, trying wherever we're at, I think there's something of benefit there for all of us. Any final questions?
Excuse me, Venerable, before you go, could you tell us if you have another series planned with TNL? Are you teaching in March?
Not March. And then the topic I wanted to do in April was taken by someone in March. I was like, no. So I have proposed a topic, but I'm not sure if it's going to be suitable, because maybe it's already been done, or is recently, or is being done. So at this stage, I'm not really sure, Paula. I'm sure it'll happen in the future, if there's interest and if it's beneficial. But otherwise, I might just take a break through March and just get my body sorted. And I haven't had a break for such a long time, so my health's not supremely strong. It's been quite a challenging year, and so I just want to take a bit of a break. But yes, perhaps in April we may meet again. I've also proposed a topic for maybe like June, July or something otherwise. So I'm just going to wait to hear back from Venerable as to whether the topic works or not.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Shall we do some dedications? Yeah? Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm still finding my way, not knowing what works and what doesn't, and what's helpful, and what level and how much meditation we can incorporate. And sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. I'm still just finding my way. So I'm very open to, advice and feedback. And so please very much feel free to write to Venerable Dondrup, and he can maybe pass on what it is that you guys do like, that maybe I'm not able to have helped with so far, but I can help with in the future. Okay, I'm just a work in progress. I'm open to all suggestions.
Venerable, can I just say quickly
Please,
that both series that I've done with you, they're very well attended, and consistently so. So that should be a great encouragement. Yes, let's just put it this way. Your figures are very good.
Oh, my figure? So that's where I want to put on some weight, with those figures. All right. Well, yeah, the main thing is if it's purposeful and beneficial and meaningful, otherwise, if it's wasting your time or my time, that's silly. But yeah, thank you. Thank you, Paula. Okay, so let's do some dedications. How fortunate, I mean, so precious, so amazing that we've had this time together, and so much virtue has been created. We're very, 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 very blessed. And so each module we do together, may we not forget the previous modules, but bring along, the refuge and the 3 jewels and the 4 truths and whatever comes next, build it layer upon layer. And all that virtue we can dedicate by sharing it in this massive ocean of virtue that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dedicate their merits in, this massive ocean for going to enlightenment. So we can join our merits together in that way. So there is no I existing from my own side. The act of dedication does not exist from its own side. and the merits that we're dedicating also do not exist from their own side, merely labeled by mind. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of a Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subjurer's moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjana's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Okay, finito. Grazie mille.